Hi there and welcome to Saving Ophelia. My name is Thijs and this is Ophelia. Now if you've been following this channel for a bit, you know that I'm planning on removing all the stainless that's been fitted to Ophelia. Well, most of it anyway. And today I think I'm going to be starting with this arch back here. I think that this arch has been used for the main sheet, giving it the ability to be moved back and forth a bit here. But right now it's in the way for me removing these masts, and seeing that I want to get them off of here, it needs to go. Now I think I'm going to find another way to do this. I did consider using the grinder to cut the stainless, but I try to look into things before I get started, and when I looked into cutting steel, I found a few things that made me change my mind rather quickly. So let's take a moment to look into the materials that Ophelia is composed of. The main material here is obviously the steel that Ophelia's hull is built from. And well, steel is basically just iron with stuff added to it. All metals, pure metals, form a regular lattice where the atoms are just arranged one by the other in a certain configuration. It's not always the same, but when you add stuff to that lattice, other atoms, then you break it up, and that changes the abilities of the material. And in the case of steel, the main lattice is iron, and then you add carbon to it, and the carbon distorts the lattice and introduces faults and tensions that for some reason end up making the material a lot stronger than it would be otherwise, and a lot less brittle. Pure iron, cast iron, will just break if you smash it with a hammer, well, hard enough. Steel will deform and bend. Anyway, you can also add other materials than just carbon, and that would introduce other faults and other defects and stuff that makes the material change its abilities in other ways. The stuff that changes the iron to steel can be added when it's made, or they can be present in the ore that's turned into the iron, which is then turned into steel. And while steel is strong, it does have a few issues, and you can see one of them here because, well, those red colors over here, well, they aren't paint. Well, not all of them, there's a bit of red paint, but most of it, well, that's from steel's main issue. As we have seen here in Ophelia, the iron of the steel can combine with the oxygen from the air and form oxides, different oxides. And well, you can actually see it here. You have the red up here, the almost orange. And down here we have something a lot darker, and not because it's wet. It used to be, but it's not anymore. It's because the different oxides depend on the ratio between oxygen atoms and iron atoms. And if it's fully oxidized, then you get these red, orangish colors here. And if you have less oxygen, then you get the very dark colors. It's almost black. We had back on the chart table, we had some almost black oxides, and they've turned into the reddish kind now. So these different oxides, they behave differently. Some of them are fairly tough, well, not compared to the steel, of course, but still, while others just flake away, as you know from ordinary rust. And you can see a bit of the issue here. This is what happens when you combine ordinary steel with stainless. You have two different metals, and when you combine two different metals with an electrolyte present, like salt water, you set up basically a battery which allows power to flow and causes quite powerful corrosion. Ophelia has been lucky because she's mainly seen rainwater, and that's not a very good electrolyte, so the problem isn't as bad. But if we go sailing, then it's probably going to get bad, and we don't want that, so the stainless needs to go. But stainless is a different metal here. It's had a lot of chromium added to it, because when you add chromium, that forms a protective layer on top of the steel. There's a bit of iron in there that will disappear, and the chromium will form this transparent film that prevents oxygen from getting to the steel, well, the iron, and oxidize it. And it's quite clever because it's self-healing. If you remove a layer, you cause a scratch. Well, then the chromium that's exposed there will oxidize again and form this film. So stainless needs oxygen to work, which is also why you shouldn't embed it into fiberglass or stuff like that, because you'll still have some seepage of water, well, you can have, and then the iron in the stainless can steal the oxygen from the water molecules and oxidize, but there's not enough free oxygen for the protective layer to form. So yeah, we shouldn't embed it, and we also shouldn't combine it. Now, the chromium in the stainless is actually the problem here, because that's why I'm not using the grinder. When you heat up chromium a lot, you can form what's called hexavalent chromium, and chromium itself is not too bad. It's not toxic, it's fairly safe material to handle, but hexavalent chromium is anything but. It's directly toxic, and it's also a carcinogen. So seeing that I'm really not too fond of the idea of getting cancer, I don't want to form it. And the main problem with stainless is when you weld it, and I'm not going to weld it, but those sparks that are coming off from the grinder, they're fairly hot and they can form hexavalent chromium. We are in the open air, it might not be too big of a problem, but I'm not willing to chance it. So instead, I bought some blades for the reciprocating saw that should be able to cut stainless, and then I'm going to cut it away that way. That went quite a lot faster than I thought it would, but I think I'm just going to cut through the rest and get this done. So while I was cutting the steel out there, it started raining. I don't know if it showed up on camera, but it got a lot heavier. But fortunately, I'm done out there now. I've cut the arch away and I moved it, as you saw. And the only thing that needs to be done there now is to lift the masts off. So that part of the project is basically done. Not that it's a huge part, but still it needs to be done. Beyond that, my visit down here this time also showed me something, because I've long had a sneaking suspicion that the cooling system for the engine, not the one on the engine itself, is leaking, but the saltwater system, probably the exhaust, is leaking. There hasn't been a lot of rain. Well, there has been a lot of rain, but not much more than there usually is, especially around the storm last time. And that didn't put a lot of water inside Ophelia. But last week I had the engine up and running. And now, well, now the swamp under the engine is basically flooded. Let me show you. Flooded might be a strong word, but still, there is a lot of water down there. I think you can see it here. Yeah. That shouldn't have happened. It hasn't rained that much, so the water has to come from somewhere else. And I'm guessing it's the exhaust system, which is nice to know. I can't do anything about it right now, and I don't really need to run the engine a lot, but it's nice to know that we might have an issue down there. So I'll need to get this water out. So while the pump is doing its thing, I would like to thank you for tagging along once again, and I hope you'll tag along again next week. Before you leave, I'd like to ask you to please leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already done so, and please do leave a comment if you have the time, because that helps the channel grow, and I would like the channel to grow a bit more. So thank you for this time, and I hope you'll have a good one until the next time.